no problem there. All right, Carrie's going to go through and do a presentation, on Article 5 of the Constitution, Convention of States. So this is a interesting topic. There's people that have strong feelings on both ways, both sides of this. So let's go through the presentation, hear what it is, and at the end of her time here, and she's going to take up most of the time, I want a good feel from the group on whether or not we should support this initiative or back away from it. Okay? And I'll let you make up your own mind after you see the presentation. Okay? All right, Terry, and you want me to run the video now, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
First of all, I'm going to do a little blurb, but you can get it up for me, please. Okay, so basically, what I'd like to start out with. I'm going to shoot myself.
Did you forget that too?
No, done. It's right there. It's right there. Right in front of my face. Okay, the Article 5 Convention of States basically says, and we'll go ahead and look it up and read it. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislators of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof. As the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year, 1808, shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clause of the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. So basically, we're talking about the second option. The first option is when Congress calls a convention. And a lot of people think that the very first convention, which was technically the transition from the Articles of Confederation into the Constitution of the United States of America. It was a constitutional convention. It was called by the states. The states got together and worked on the Constitution. It was ratified September 25th, 1987. Okay, so 1987 is when...
1787.
Sorry. Oh my God, I even wrote it wrong.
I thought that was wrong.
1787. So 1787 is when the Constitution of the United States of America was written. Some people have claimed that it was a runaway constitution. Some things were done illegally. Number one, the rules were never changed. And number two, it's not an open convention. An open convention leads to a whole nother can of worms. So the next constitutional convention was when they did the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the U.S. And that was held on March 4th, 1789. Communication back then was a little bit, hard to come by. So some people didn't even show up until September of that year. So actually, they weren't finalized and ratified until December 15th of 1791, 2 years later. So that's a constitutional convention. What we're talking about here is a convention of states. Okay, and I'll let the video go. That's right. Play.
The United States Constitution was written to form a more perfect union that would enable checks and balances to prevent a bloody revolution from being a necessary measure to abolish tyranny. Excellent though it was, Colonel George Mason feared the national government might one day end in a tyrannical aristocracy. The rights of the people needed to be secured against potential corruption at the national level. One of the solutions the framers decided upon can be found in Article 5, which gives state legislators the authority to call a convention that bypasses federal legislators to amend the Constitution. That gives we the people the opportunity to make some long overdue structural adjustments. Maybe term limits would be a good place to start. Here's how the process works. Citizens request their state legislators to pass a bill called an application with operative language identical in each state. These legislators of the states then pass the application. Generally, only a simple majority is needed. Congress shall, by law, call a convention of the states as soon as it receives applications from 2/3 of the state legislatures. That's 34 states. Delegates chosen by the state legislatures attend the convention. Each state only gets one vote at the convention, but they can send as many delegates to represent the state as they so choose. Amendments are proposed, debated, and voted upon at the convention. Finally, ratification takes place in the states. Each amendment must be ratified by 3/4 of the states in order to become part of the U.S. Constitution. But what about a runaway convention? Let's get a reality check. Like constitutional law scholar Robert G. Nadelson says, there are far more political and legal constraints on a runaway convention than on a runaway Congress. The convention delegates, also called commissioners, are bound to the will of their state legislatures. If they don't vote as their states demand, they get recalled and might even get sent to prison. Furthermore, a full 3/4 of the state legislatures, we're talking 38 state legislatures, must ratify each and every amendment in order for it to become part of the U.S. Constitution. Even Alexander Hamilton and Abraham Lincoln, who favored national government, emphasized that Article 5 gives states authority over the national government. Hamilton writes that national rulers have no option upon the subject. The words of Article 5 are peremptory. Congress shall call a convention. And Lincoln says the convention mode seems preferable in that it allows amendments to originate with the people themselves. Article 5 Convention of the States is a safe route to stopping federal overreach. Civilizations rise and fall. Let's be a civilization that saw the cycle of collapse coming and broke it.
So far, the Article 5 Convention of States is being run by Citizens for Self-Governance. It's their project, and they have already gotten this very piece of paper signed and approved by, and this is in order, Georgia, Florida, Alaska, Alabama, Tennessee, Indiana, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arizona, North Dakota, Texas, and Missouri. 12 states have already done this. This is probably something that is going to happen. And what makes it different from other proposals for a convention of states is the organization. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Okey-dokey. Yes. How many of you agree that Washington, D.C. is way out of control? Yeah, I bet. Next slide. Mainly spending, regulatory issues. I have to say the EPA land grabs, the NSA spying, Department of Education on transgenders, all of those things overstep their bounds. Congressional attacks on state sovereignty. Some people have stated that we don't need a constitutional convention because the states can opt out of any federal law using the 10th Amendment, except for the fact that the wording of the 10th Amendment has been abused, shall we say, by the left, and used in their way when they want it to do their thing. So a constitutional convention will clarify any of that stuff.
Convention of States.
Convention of States will clarify the wording and make sure that people do what the Constitution says and not what they think it says. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And, yeah, it's not 17 trillion, it's 19.957 trillion. And I don't know if you want to bring up the debt clock.
No,
Well, we can bring that up,
Okay, all
because I
right.
gotta shut this down and
Yeah.
do that.
we know it's running.
Sherry, just my self-edification, the abuse that you're talking about is like when the government says, here's the law, and if you don't abide by it by your state, we will cut off funding.
Yes,
I mean, that's the abuse you're talking about.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
oh yeah.
And that needs to be clarified, absolutely, you know, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So not only are we nearly $20 trillion in debt at this point in time, but the federal government owes so much more in an interest and compounded interest and stuff like that. It's trillions upon trillions. It's way more than $20 trillion overall. And they owe Social Security. They owe Medicare. They owe that to those people. They stole that from the people who paid into those programs, and they need to put it back. So even if they confiscated everything from everyone, America would still be in debt. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we're talking about the regulatory crisis, and the federal bureaucracy has made things so confusing and hard. I will cite the EPA's land grab. The EPA regulated that any standing water that has been standing for more than 6 months essentially can be confiscated by the government. It can be labeled as a wetland. It can be labeled as, so we're talking about farmers' ponds, okay? We're talking about a ditch that has too much water. They can claim that. That is EPA regulatory, way overreach, should have never happened, and it needs to be, these people need to be reined in. They've caused our inflation. The dollar is not worth hardly anything anymore. Even all their rules and regulations have decreased the gross domestic product, and we're hurting for it. We're really hurting for it. Next slide. State sovereignty. Boy, they really don't care what the states do they? They just come up with their own rules and regulations, and the states, as you were saying, the states have to follow what they say, or we're going to pull all your funding. That is threat. That is...
It is a threat.
It's wrong. It's so wrong, and their social agenda that's coming along with this. To get states involved, they make the threat of, and I'll do Department of Education, you have to allow for transgender students, or we're going to pull your school funding. That is such a terrible social agenda that violates, gosh, First Amendment, shall I go through all the amendments? It violates so much of our liberal freedoms, our liberties and our freedoms. Go ahead.
Excuse me, but doesn't it depend on what side of an issue you're at? I mean, look at, the thing that's
Sanctuary
coming.
cities.
Yeah,
Sanctuary states.
cities, this immigration thing
Yeah.
from California. They're not gonna abide by the federal laws. the federal government is saying, okay, we're gonna pull your funding.
And they should.
I don't have a problem.
Oregon
with
is a sanctuary state,
Right.
and they should pull all federal funding from Oregon.
That's your
it.
arrangement.
Right.
You know, I
But
have
I
to
mean,
say,
how
it
do
depends
you-
on how egregious.
Well, I mean, by whose standards? I mean, this,
That's why we have Congress to debate these things. God's standards?
well, no, I'm saying, you know, you're talking about having 30, how many, 38?
38 states to approve,
Yeah, you can't get 38 people to agree.
to agree on.
See, that's why having a runaway convention is like minuscule chance of that happening. But moving past that, I mean, can anyone deny that the federal government has overreached, overstepped their bounds, and attacked the state's sovereignty?
Oh, definitely.
No, they,
Michelle Obama's school lunch program.
Oh, those things are just gross. Okay.
Not me for.
So
football
the
players.
founders believed that the structure for limited government would provide the greatest protection of liberty. And these are the founders, not only Ben Franklin, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, but we have James Madison, George Mason, Eldridge Geary, McHenry Blount, William Pierce. We have so many founding fathers that worked on the Constitution of the United States of America. And they put in all these checks and balances, which over the years have gone by the wayside. Constitutional law, to me, doesn't evolve. It's not an evolutionary, you can't. One day it means this, as time goes by, it means that. No, it should be the same thing over and over again. And that's the federal takeover on the decision-making process.
Karen, come back up a little bit here to what Frank said. How do you draw the line between where the federal government should step in? Because I'm with him on the sanctuary cities and all this stuff.
This is,
Okay, the federal government should say, you know what, we're cutting your funds.
Mhm.
And like with Oregon, we're cutting your funds. But so where do you draw that line?
This is where the Article 5 conventions of states comes in. This is
Okay.
where they come in
State.
and they discuss it, and this is where amendments are proposed to help define that line.
Dave, you got a,
Yeah, I got a comment. Article 1, Section 8 lists the powers that Congress is supposed to have. And guess what? Education is not one of them,
Nope.
Okay.
okay? So, the whole Department of Education is an unconstitutional
Yep.
edifice that needs to be just defunded and
I
abolished.
agree with that.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And the argument they have that, well, this ship's already sailed, doesn't float, because that ship can always come right back to the port and get unloaded. So, these are the things that are supposed to happen. This is why Chris Ann Hall and the other lady, the other constitutional lawyer, argue that we just gotta get the people to obey the Constitution. That's the way it's written, and there are a couple things that have to be fixed, but I'll let you go ahead and continue.
Okay.
So we can-
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, okay, you did. So essentially, this is a nonpartisan issue. I think both the left and the right should be well aware, independents, libertarians, whatever you want to call yourself, atheist, politically atheist. It's not a partisan issue. It is something that affects all of us. It's something that, do you trust your state government more than Washington DC?
For some things,
I
yeah.
was gonna say,
I would say overall, because the federal government is such a behemoth and wasteful in spending money, time, effort, Russian conspiracy, need to table that.
The more local the body of government, the more accessible it is to you. So you
Yes.
want the smallest body of government possible.
Thank you very much.
In fact, Janie's campaign in 2009 was to bring Congress back to the states and abolish we have a system now, we have computers and whatnot, they don't have to be in Washington DC.
Yeah,
Get them out of there, because that's where that's a cesspool
Yeah.
of money.
Let them
exactly,
Skype.
exactly.
And they shouldn't have to carry
Um,
Well, they sure
So I
can.
think everybody should feel that this is an important issue. And it would be nice if we could approach the Democrats about this and hopefully encourage them to also take part. I think they should be well aware that throwing money at the problem hasn't been solving anything. Are your lives any better over the years? Okay, there we go. We also know that Washington DC, they're never going to do anything on their own. They're not going to relinquish power. They want more of it. They want the ability to tax more. They want the ability to take more and claim that they're doing good stuff for us.
That's why Obamacare's still sitting.
And we're coming to a crossroads. We are
I don't care what this.
getting to the point where we're really fed up. You got the Democrats who are screaming bloody murder about what they want. You have the Republicans, which are pretty soon, I'm strapping today, are gonna, fight back. And this, I think, is a preferable method than a revolutionary war or bloody civil war. I can, myself, see something like that on the horizon. I can see militias rising up to fight the tyranny of big government. And even the Democrats have videos of themselves with gun parties. There are pro-gun Democrats. They do exist.
Yeah, they're the only ones shooting everybody.
So essentially, we get to the Article 5, Convention of States. That's what the founders gave us. They put it in the Constitution for a reason, because they knew at one point in time, the federal government would grow so big and so ugly that they would never rein themselves in, and they would have to rely, the founders would have to rely on the states to gain that back, to grab back a hold of it.
That's where we're at.
So essentially, there are, as I read in the beginning, there are two methods to, go ahead, next slide. There are two methods to propose constitutional amendments, and the next one. Process number one, which can be considered a constitutional convention, is whereupon amendments are proposed by Congress. So we're talking 100 senators, 435 representatives, that's a total of 575 people, and 2/3 of them need to agree. That's 357 people who have to agree on what the amendment does, the wording, where to approve it, where to ratify, all sorts of stuff. And then, once they figure out that they want to do an amendment, now this has happened. We have amendments number 11 through 27. So it does happen from time to time, whereupon Congress, you won't hear about it on the mainstream media, I'll tell you that much. So basically, the same thing happens with the second process, is it goes to the state legislators, whether they want to ratify it in their state Congress, or whether they want to hold a convention to ratify it. Again, 38 states have to approve it, which means it takes 12 states to say no, and then an amendment is quashed. The second, of course, process, method 2, is 34 states submit applications for the same issue. That's particularly important, the same issue. This Article 5 Convention of States by Citizens for Self-Governance specifically states, this is the scope of an Article 5, of the Article 5 Convention they're calling for. Impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and members of Congress. Those are specific things that can be discussed at this Article 5 Convention of States. Like I said, 12 states so far have already approved that, and they're moving along. And so it's something that I'd rather do this than have a bloody civil war, because I can see it on the horizon, I really can. So calling this Convention of States, to rein in this power. Go ahead and go to the next one. There have been 448 Article 5 petitions since 1789. 448. Very few of them have actually come to light. In fact, most of them failed because of their lack of coordination. Different wording, different topics, things like that. A lack of grassroots push to get things to happen in the state legislators. They've all been tossed by the wayside. 448. I was floored by that number. So the Convention of States really is looking at the big picture. And founded by the Citizens for Self-Governance, which Mark Meckler and Michael Ferris are the two essentially presidents of the project. Their mission is to urge and empower state legislators to call a convention of states to propose amendments to the Constitution to curb the abuses of the federal government. Simple mission statement. Reining in the federal government. They're calling the convention for a particular subject rather than a particular amendment. That's another thing that's beneficial about this, that the other 448, they were mainly calling for a specific amendment. I'll cite term limits. Term limits was one that came up recently, I think 2016 was when they were really pushing hard to have an Article 5 Convention of States to essentially vote on and potentially ratify right then and there term limits for Congress. And that's a whole other can of worms, but that obviously has dwindled by the wayside. They lack the organization. It's a specific amendment. It has no room for discussion, no room for people to get together and have a consensus on it. Grassroots mobilization that's the key. That is the key to what they are doing here. If they don't have people at our level working on it, it's going to die. We need to keep poking and jabbing at our legislators and say, hey, this is egregious, okay? This is something that needs to come up to the foreground. And I will tell you that here in the state of Michigan, the application for the Article 5 COS has been tabled. It's been in committee, and it's been in committee for over a year now. And so basically, it's stagnated here in the state of Michigan. And people are trying, but we need more people. Well, they need more people to get in there and have their voices heard as a group. Let's see, we're on next to the...
Michael Ferris has been very successful in his career. He was the founder of Homeschool Legal Defense and has been very successful in arguing constitutional law across the country for quite a few years now.
Good, good.
But what is the purpose of this? Where are we going with this? Are we,
We want to rein in the federal government.
I understand that, but if it's in committee and it's been tabled for a year and a half, what are we gonna do as a body here tonight?
To resurrect it.
We're getting there.
Are we,
They want to do a
We're getting
resolution.
there. Exactly.
A resolution to do this?
from this county party to
Okay.
start putting pressure back in the legislature.
This is what I'm hoping for people to sign and
These things we get all back.
Yeah, there are
Drain the
voices,
swamp, that wetlands
petitions,
will disappear.
get
We'll get the land
resolutions
back.
passed in the counties and organize. Organization, it can happen. As you were just stating, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, 30 years grassroots leadership in all 50 states. We have the right people backing this. Just recently, Jim DeMint, who is the founder of the Heritage Foundation, joined in. And so that's going to bring in a lot of resources for Citizens for Self-Governance. And here's the plan. Viable political operation in at least 3,000 of the 4,000 state house districts in 40 states. Now you might ask, why 40 states? Well, some states are just a lost cause.
California.
California.
Oregon.
Oregon,
Actually, believe it or not,
Washington.
the ones that are in white, Montana, Nevada, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, those are lost causes. They won't even hear us, won't even hear them.
Adamses are completely willing to
All these ones that are in blue, it's basically kind of
up to rest.
circling the drain. So particularly those ones we need to focus on. There we are. And yellow means that it's actually passed in one of the chambers. I do believe this is an older map. Because I want to say that 17 have passed the House and 18 have passed in the Senate. But that still needs, you got the other half, to get working on. So, yeah.
You have Wyoming up there, one that's,
Wyoming is not, it's in blue, it's in stagnation.
what's the one up there high up there?
Montana.
Montana, Nevada, Wisconsin, and then Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut are the three main ones. And then, like I said, the blue ones are just, they're not really hopping on board either. Yellow, at least they're listening. Green, they've already passed. And we can probably put that up afterwards. So essentially, they're focusing on the states who will actually give us the time of day and pooling our resources for those 40 states.
It's being run like a political campaign.
Exactly. There are 3 statewide leadership positions. There's the state director, the legislative liaison, and the coalitions director. Basically, citizens, as we look at this little thingy, Citizens for Self-Governance, Mark Meckler, Michael Ferris, and now Jim DeMint are basically the COS grassroots coordinators. They are the leaders of the project. State directors, I know Michigan does have a state director, and I do have a video that I'll show you that I think shows him in that video. Then we move down to, all the way down to us volunteers. We would be the grassroots. That's why it's a little strip of grass. The grassroots volunteers who would go around and get petitions signed and sit into their township meetings and their Board of Commissioners meetings for the counties and stuff like that, and get things signed and get things done to present to the legislators like Sue Aller and Tristan Cole and all them, to get them to get behind it and actually stand up and present it in the House or the Senate and get things to happen that way. So state directors, basically, they train the district captains and the state leaders. They are the state leaders, essentially. They try to build up a strategy to mobilize people. And again, as Janie said, it's like campaigning. They're running it like a campaign. We can really just blow past coalitions, director, legislative liaison, district captain. There are, the district captains would be like I'm a precinct delegate for my Cato Township. So a district captain would essentially be for that particular township or that particular county. It's the smaller, more localized volunteer. You zoomed right past that, didn't you? Okay,
Just
so.
moving you along.
Yep. So how you can help, you can join the team. I went ahead and printed these out, have the petition signed, we can get a consensus. It's a lot nicer when you have, the Alcona County Republicans support this as opposed to, Carrie Mullins supports this. It's nice to have a name behind something, which is actually what brings me here today, and this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, to get people, encourage people to join in on this. Okay, we're going to move on to another video. This is going to be, I'll go to my flash drive. Oy vey.
Commissioners from all 50 states have come here
for the first ever simulated convention of states. This is to show people it can really be done.
left unchecked. Government expands limitlessly.
We need a check and balance.
These people are tired of federal overreach.
We've been going back and forth. We've been debating amendments. We had committee hearings yesterday.
Today's the day. The winds of change are about to blow. I can see the optimism.
It's exciting to meet legislators from across the country.
And just the electricity, the energy.
To discuss solutions.
It was the most extraordinary thing in my career that I've ever been a part of.
It shows a commitment to wanting to do it right.
None of us have ever seen this before, right?
That our founding fathers were in fact right yet again. The process actually works.
The very idea that I stood where Patrick Henry, Jefferson, and the folks who came up with the genius of America.
That has renewed that vigor and excitement.
It's awesome. It came in as the me. When I looked around, I was part of the we.
Now it's time for us to be leaders among leaders.
We're going to save our nation.
Exercising our rights as states under the Constitution in an Article 5 convention.
This is what we have to do. You have proven that the people of the United States are ready to hold the first Article 5 convention in the history of this country.
That it's at far greater risk for us to do nothing.
Clearly we can do this.
Probably our last best hope of preserving liberty for the next generation.
Freedom is what's at stake. Self-government and freedom are the outcomes when you have limited power.
What could be more important than to do something like this? We have a chance to do something extraordinary.
Thank you for being here, and let's get to work.
Okay, so September 23rd, 2016, they had a simulated convention of states, and this is what they came up with. Fiscal Restraints Proposal 1. Section 1, the public debt shall not be increased except upon a recorded vote of 2/3 in each House of Congress, and only for a period not to exceed 1 year. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Section 2, no state or any subdivision thereof shall be compelled or coerced by Congress or the President to appropriate money. The provisions of the first section of this amendment shall take effect 3 years after ratification. Now, 45 commissioners or delegates supported that amendment, and 3 opposed it. We'll say Connecticut, Ohio, and Oregon. The 2 that abstained were West Virginia and Wisconsin. Federal Legislative and Executive Judicial Proposal 1. Section 1, the power of Congress to regulate commerce among the several states shall be limited to the regulation of the sale, shipment, transportation, or movement of goods, articles, or persons. Congress shall not regulate activities solely because it affects commerce among the several states. Stay off our internet. The power of Congress, let's see, Section 2, the power of Congress to make all laws that are necessary and proper to regulate commerce among the several states or with foreign nations shall not be construed to include the power to regulate or prohibit any activity that is confined within a single state, regardless of its effects outside the state, whether it employs instrumentalities therefrom, or whether its regulation or prohibition is part of a comprehensive regulatory scheme. But Congress shall have the power to define and provide for punishment of offenses constituting acts of war or violent insurrection against the United States. Section 3, the legislatures of the states shall have standing to file any claim alleging violation of this article. Nothing in this article shall be construed to limit standing that may otherwise exist for a person. Section 4, this article shall become effective 5 years from the date of its ratification. We had 44 representatives, commissioners, delegates, support this. 6 opposed it. Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, go figure, New York, Virginia, and Wyoming. And it looks like everybody was there for that one. Federal term limits and judicial jurisdiction, Proposal 1. No person shall be elected to more than 6 full terms in the House of Representatives. No person shall be elected to more than 2 full terms in the Senate. These limits shall include the time served prior to the enactment of this article. McCain, sorry, goodbye. So 35 supported that, 35 representatives supported that, and 12 opposed it, 3 abstained. Hawaii, Iowa, and Oregon abstained. I'm sorry if I'm totally...
Oh, we know.
No, we're aware of it.
It was opposed by Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, California, Connecticut, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, New Hampshire, Ohio, West Virginia, and Washington. Also seeing Ohio as not being a very prominent. Anyway, okay. Federal legislative and executive jurisdictional Proposal 2, jurisdiction. The legislators of states shall have authority to abrogate any provision of federal law issued by Congress, President, or administrative agencies of the United States, whether in the form of statute, decree, order, regulation, rule, opinion, decision, or other form. Yeah. Such abrogation shall be effective when the legislatures of 3/5 of the states approve a resolution declaring the same provision or provisions of federal law to be abrogated. This abrogation authority may also be applied to provisions of federal law existing at the time this amendment is ratified. This goes back to the 10th Amendment and clarifies it, essentially. Section 3, no government entity or official may take any action to enforce provision of federal law after it is abrogated according to this amendment. Any action to enforce provision of abrogated federal law may be enjoined by a federal, state court, blah, 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 blah. Yep. So these are, this is from the simulation, the Simulated Convention of States.
All right, those are issues that they want to discuss at this?
This is stuff that they came up with. This is what came out of the simulation. And this is very much like what would happen should it really actually go forward.
Okay, so they ran a simulation, they came up with a bunch of ideas.
Yes.
And
so these
they had representation from all states,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. There's copies of this for everybody to...
There's not, I didn't make copies of this.
The thing we gotta remember here is that was just a simulation.
Exactly.
The people that were sent there, I don't know if they're volunteers or they're actually chosen by the legislature to be there.
Yeah.
They were in the right frame of mind, okay? You're not necessarily gonna get the same group of people in there, and you're sure as heck not gonna have conversations.
We don't need to read that to everybody. You know, if they want a copy,
I can email it out to everybody. I do have these all.
But that's just a simulation for...
Correct.
Yeah, we don't know what's gonna come out of an actual convention.
Okay.
So now, basically, quiz me. Open to questions. Let's have it.
What I would like to, if there's, go ahead, Dave, what's your question?
Just I think a selling point to me, but I don't know if those articles that they were wanting to make constitutional changes is the same thing or not, but I would like to see where representatives, senators, the president, I don't care who they are, any federal employee, serves 2 years and they get a retirement for life. They're exempted from Obamacare or other types of things that the rest of us have to take. You know, we have to take the bitter pill, but they can get away with it. That they not be exempt. That would be one of the things that I would like to see. If you're going to go to Congress, fine. We're going to pay you stipends every year, but after that, you're not going to get any retirement. You're going to have to figure out other ways of getting your retirement. And just like everybody else does.
And your Social Security, yeah.
I love paying the Social Security.
And
They
that's
do.
exactly
They
what
have
we
since
did today.
1995.
I'd like to make an opposing view if that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can I get stand up, please?
I suppose, yeah.
Yep.
Don't mess with my paperwork.
Don't worry, I won't.
But I'd like to see something.
First of all, great presentation.
Thank you, Charity.
Based on that, I would definitely vote for it, but there's some real no same issues here. First of all, okay, we don't have any founding fathers anymore, okay? And we've got we've had a corrupt system for a very long time. We have some business people and international corporations and other special interest groups, including probably foreign nations, that have weaseled their way into our political process, all the way from here at the county level, all the way up to the federal level, okay? So the first issue is, who are we going to get to be our delegates or our commissioners? Okay, that is the biggest question, because, you know, if you got a Rick Snyder or some of the folks in our Congress, in our legislature, they're picking the winners here, then it's already a non-starter, because they are the same kind of crony people that are going to protect the system, okay? And that means I'll just scrub the whole thing. I'd rather keep things the way they are, basically. We're going to run through this whole thing. Nothing's going to come out of it because they will not come to a consensus, all right? That's the first part, okay? And I'm good with that, actually, because as far as I'm concerned, we're better off limping along right now. And I know there's a threat of civil war and what have you, but there's too many people making too much money off the system the way it is right now for them to allow it to tip over that far, okay?
How would you approach, how would you propose to fix it?
Let me go on here.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna run through the problems, okay?
All right.
Okay. The other thing I want to start off with, was the Declaration of Independence, okay? Paragraph 2 of the Declaration of Independence says that whenever the rights of the people are being abused by the government, they can either alter it or abolish it. So that falls behind what the Constitution says. It doesn't matter what the Constitution says about how a convention of states is going to be, because the people can get together and say, no, we're going to do it this way because we're tired of listening to how you people want to do it. You've been railroading this for 150 years, and we're done, right? And all they have to do is get the state legislatures to buy into that, okay? Which means we need grassroots. We need to start here at the local level. And we got to educate, and I've been saying this for 2 years now, educate, we got to inform, we got to empower, we got to engage the people in the cause of liberty. If we don't have these people down here at the local level understanding, like the people did in 1776 and 1787, exactly what a constitution does and what exactly it's supposed to do, and understand the long-range ramifications of the articles and the sections of a constitution, then they're just going to be in this groupthink, and they're going to just nod their heads and go along to get along. And we've seen it in convention, where, especially in Republican convention, where they go, well, we're just going to go ahead and run around with signs and do all this stuff, and never mind that the same people in power end up being in power at the end of the day, you know. So we got to watch out for that go along to get along kind of thing that's going to happen at these things, because nobody's going to know enough how to lay the groundwork to object to things that are going against us, okay? Okay. So we're jumping the gun a little bit, in my opinion. We have got to get into the grassroots and educate people about what's going on here. And we can't trust these people, like I said at the beginning. We got corporations knee-deep in our legislature right now, and calling the shots. You got the bureaucrats and the corporations, which are right now moving to regionalize our state and just get rid of the counties altogether, really. They're going to have these extra executive agencies that are not accountable, not elected, running the state, okay? And that's why they're pushing for, we already have a part-time legislature, a term-limited legislature, which has destroyed our core competency of our legislature. We used to have statesmen who would teach our younger legislatures exactly how it is you're supposed to operate, which is, we're here to protect the rights of the people. Okay, now these young legislatures come in and you have the bureaucrats and the lobbyists saying, hey, come on, let me show you how to do this. Let me run you through the paces. Here's a nice little law you can put your name on. And they trot them through this thing and they pass these laws without any idea the long-range implication of what's going to happen. And this could happen at the Convention of the States, like the balanced budget. Why do we need a balanced budget amendment? Because, well, they keep spending too much money on all these programs. Well, the bottom line is, once again, Article 1, Section 8 says there's only supposed to be 8 things they spend money on. So how was it that they played games with us, okay, and twisted the words? It's because there's another book, by the way, that helped the founders write the Declaration of Independence and write the Constitution and the Articles of Confederation, called the Law of Nations, which was written in 1758 by a guy named Emerson Vattel in Prussia. Okay, he got around Europe. I think it was in Prussia when he wrote this thing. But every single part of that Constitution, every single part of the Declaration of Independence comes out of that book, okay? And nobody knows about it. And also in that thing it says, by the way, if an article in a contract or a constitution says what it says, you do not twist the words. And even if you look at our court cases, many court cases from the old Supreme Court said, you're not allowed to twist the words of the Constitution. It says what it says. And now we've got the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice saying, well, you know, it's not a penalty, it's a tax. No, it says it's a penalty. That's unconstitutional. You know, never mind the whole medical thing is unconstitutional because it's not in the 8 things. So we're talking about people that aren't following this thing anyway, okay? And it's because there's some structural issues that we got to address. And first of all, we got to undo the stuff that happened in 1913, okay? This $20 trillion debt you pointed out, that's grand larceny. That's a crime against humanity. That's what that is, okay? Those people ought to have all their stuff taken from them and put in jail or swinging from a tree because they've murdered millions of people across the globe to make lots of money. And that's documented. All these bankers and these international corporations have made piles of money off all these wars, okay? I'm a Marine. I know about the history of the Marines. We fought a bunch of wars for a bunch of companies down in Central America back in the early teens of the last century, okay? DuPont and the banana guys and all the Dole and all these other fruit companies and rubber companies. Marines were their heavy men. We went down there and shot people up just so they can move in their stuff. So this is not old, this is not new stuff. This is happening in Iraq and Afghanistan and all over the place over there. Okay, so these are things that you can't do a convention, okay? You just gotta reach down and grab a hole and say, you're done, and arrest these people. But everybody down there in Washington, D.C., as we've seen with Hillary and with Obama and the rest of the crowd, is completely out of control. And then, until you have moral people armed who are going to go down there and take care of this legally, then we're not going to get anywhere, because this convention thing is just going to go around and around, because the people in power like it the way it is. Now, they'd love to have a balanced budget amendment because that gives them the authority to do more. Okay, and you say, well, you scratch your head. You say, yeah, how can that be? Because does that mean they get to tax you more to get that budget balance? Does it mean they can go steal from the general fund to balance that budget? And what do they have to do, you know? Because there's a lot of ways they can play with money down there. Okay?
They're doing it already.
All right, Dave.
Okay, I know.
So,
Thank
wait,
you.
Anyway,
I got a question.
that's all I gotta say. I got more if you wanna talk about it, but my issue is, it's a great idea if we had the right people that we could trust to go down there and do the good job.
So I again ask you, how would you fix it?
How would I fix it?
He
I would-
said, he just said.
Pick up guns, go down there and.
No, wow, that's part of it, but the other part of that thing is, you don't have to have a convention to demand that our state governments get their senators back, okay? All that, you don't have to have a convention to do that. You don't have to have a convention for the states to demand the abolition of the Federal Reserve. You don't have to have the states, a convention to have the states demand that Congress fix the House of Representatives, which should be 10,500 people right now.
So you have to have an army.
You don't have to have an army, but you have to have states.
Don't leave.
You have to have the states and the legislatures that are smart enough.
How are you gonna get them together?
Well, that could help, but it's not good, but you go into this convention, it's a different issue. If you can get the states individually to do this, on laser sharp, pinpointed things. Not just going, well, we wanna limit the government. Okay, well, that's great. Just sit down and talk about this all day, you know? We gotta have laser sharp, pinpointing, surgical strikes on what has to happen to redivide and conquer this
You had a
government.
question? Yeah, Dave.
Well, I want, what Dave said about hospitalization and pay and retirement, it's all true, but none of that's gonna happen. Absolutely isn't gonna happen, because the guys that are gonna make the change are like, wait a minute, Dave.
Oh, you're talking to me?
No, I'm talking to him for a second. None of that's gonna happen because of what he said.
No,
The
they're not
guys that
going,
are in charge of changing that thing are the guys that are the beneficiaries. So that's like saying, you know, I'm making 100,000 a year. I think I want my pay cut 50,000. And you're not gonna do it. You're not gonna do it if you're the deciding vote. Now, what I wanted to ask you, Dave, is who do you trust?
I don't trust anybody.
Well, I know, but don't we have to pick?
We know we
What I'm
don't.
suggesting
We
is we pick
don't.
somebody. I know, but
We don't get to make that choice. The legislature and the governor are gonna make those choices.
Yeah, but why don't we find someone or two that we trust and try to support them in some way, financially or vote-wise or campaigning-wise? Why don't we get behind somebody with some integrity that you could pick for us, that that you feel has integrity? If not, we've got to get someone in our community that has integrity, like you, and we gotta run them for candidate to get in there.
People
That's
will
the
not-
only way we're gonna change it.
The public will not vote for an honest person because an honest person will tell you things you don't want to hear.
Yep.
And it doesn't happen. I can tell you, I've read it 3 times. They will not vote for somebody who tells them things they don't want to hear.
Yep.
that's
And
right.
if you're honest,
We
you're going to
have
say things
to-
that upset people.
We have to appeal to the people who are already there and pray to God that they listen and do the right thing. We have to appeal to humanity's good nature. I know it's in there somewhere, even you.
I agree with you, but the
I
issue
have-
is,
I have
Very
a
good.
question here.
is it for me, can I sit down, or?
Go ahead.
No, you can answer it there, here, it don't make any difference, it's for everybody here. It's high time John Q. Public gets educated, if you will, about how things really are. And you have to do that first. And then, everybody can sit down, they're all on the same boat, they're all going the same place, has the same interest, and you can accomplish something. If you don't do that, or you're gonna rely on somebody else, it's just a game, insurance companies, whatever, you're seeing it all, it's been this way for eons, and it's getting worse. And right now, we are on a crisis. And the crisis is way, way above what the average people are capable of even handling or understanding. And we're sitting on the Great Lakes, okay, which is the last hurrah, I might add, as to what's going on with your Obamacare, with your new health care and all this other stuff, really doesn't make that much difference. If the big puddles out there take a shit. And when this is very close to happening, by watching and listening to these people talk about whether, and what happened just in the last week here with the tip of the Met, which run the meetings that was in Petoskey for Pipeline 5, and let this whole study and all the money that went into this, okay, for the last year or two, actually goes way back further than that, to let that drop right off, and all of a sudden they got cahoots. They found somebody in the study that was working for Edrich. Well, holy cow, so what? You had another guy, Ed Coons, that would come out and give a big presentation on what that all was, okay? It's 97% fresh water of the United States. It's 21% of the world, okay? Let me give you just one little thing. When you look out in the Great Lakes and see a freighter out there, it's a 700 footer, it's a 1,000 footer, and it's just sitting out there and you're just looking at it. And how long is it? About that long that you're seeing it? The average depth of Lake Huron is less than 200 feet. Take that little thing that you see out there and standing on the end, 3/4 of it sticking out of water. Ladies and gentlemen, that is nothing more than a sheet of water up there, is what we're looking at. And how long do you think, with all the plastics and all the things that we're putting into that lake, and the other lakes, and then to have a pipeline that is capable of turning this thing over overnight, and 6 months of the year under ice, that's not good. You better all move to Superior, because that's when all the stuff is coming down and you're getting the good stuff up there, because everything below is gonna be trash. We got chemicals that takes
So
care
how
of.
does that apply to the Article 5 Convention of States? How does that apply?
Well, let me finish this. You got chemicals they're putting in the oceans and all to collaborate the oil spill and so on. That doesn't work in fresh water. So we're really behind the 8 ball here. It applies the same way to what we're talking about. You have to educate the people. You have to get somebody in there that can say, hey, no kidding.
As long as there's a financial
I didn't come
edge.
in here today to listen to this. I didn't know what was going on. But I came in here and that young man up there says, Thomas, I think you ought to come in and listen to the program. I'm glad I did. Because this here is what I'm talking about with out there and with all the other things that are going on. Insurance companies and all these other people are running the show. And you can't rely on any of them to go ahead and do anything. So we have to become educated and we have to all sit down and get groups and say, hey, this is all bull malarkey.
That's the whole purpose of what this presentation was about. Trying to get people to understand we need education, we need grassroots support. No matter which way we go, we've got to get people involved. So from a perspective, bringing this whole thing together, what do we want to support? What does this group want to support?
I have a little bit more that I want to cover, just a little
Okay.
bit. Because you see all this documentation that I have up here, all of this stuff, frequently asked questions, short answers, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that is really nice, guide for lawyers and legislators. This is going to be mandatory reading for anybody who goes to the convention. And it is 357 pages, but it is exactly how to write an amendment, how to work with each other, how to legally make things stick.
So does that mean that any delegates would be a lawyer or a legislator?
No,
Okay,
I'm not a lawyer, but let me tell you, if I read this, in which I've read some of it, okay, it's hard to swallow, but I'm wiser for it.
okay, well, when I look at the title for lawyers and legislators, say those going to convention, I'm thinking, wait a minute, that is not what we want.
No. What we want, hopefully, what will happen, and this is, here's why I'm thinking that it's, no harm, no foul. You say it's gonna circle the drain, circle the train, let's try it. For the love of God, what's happening now? What are we doing
The
now?
concern is they're gonna say, well, we have to come up with something, and then they'll come up with a balanced budget amendment or something.
And
Which is
still
not,
has
it's
to-
gonna make the problem worse.
And it still
But
has
that's
to
what they
go
do. They
through
keep-
ratification.
They keep strapping, Band-Aids on things,
It
and
has to still go through ratification. There are multiple steps to this,
What-
multiple
yeah,
checks and
what I'm saying,
balances.
and my argument is, we haven't educated the people well enough. We haven't educated our legislatures well enough.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Right.
That's what we
But-
need. We need the grassroots to go and educate the
Question.
legislators and do that.
Point here. I work with youth. I'd like to bring in the youth that comes right out of these schools right here and have them listen to what took place here tonight. They wouldn't have a clue what we're doing. Not one clue. It's not taught. We talk about educating. We're dinosaurs. We're gonna go back to school and get re-educated. What if our youth aren't being educated?
Nope.
Our youth have no idea about what you just talked about, sir, about the water. Our youth have no idea what Dave's talking about. They have no idea what this debt situation is causing them for the rest of their lives. And we're sitting here and talking to the choir. This is around, I'm in total agreement with what you're saying. We need another one of these things like we need a hole in the head. We've got how many investigations currently going on right now in Washington over anybody that has a bitch about anything? Let's investigate them. Let's have a committee that goes after them. More and more money. You see that? I'd like to have that count. Oh, it is. There's the debt clock. That's because of all the committees we've got going on. Well, what's being done? At the end of the day, something drastically different has to happen, and this isn't it.
Why would you say, well, what is it?
I don't know what it is.
What is the
but-
answer?
like I
but-
said,
What is the answer?
my response is, you focus on repealing the 17th Amendment, you focus on getting rid of the Federal Reserve, you focus on repealing the 16th Amendment, you focus on repealing the 14th Amendment, okay? Those are the five things, and you focus on, you might need an amendment to change the way they count the House of Representatives, but you gotta bring that number up to get better fidelity of representation, and you also need to have, anything that comes out of that place has gotta be supermajority. Because having a simple majority of 435 people voting for the fate of 320 million, there's something wrong with that, okay? Those are the five things that probably have to be done, okay?
So
But
that's why we're
you
opening it
don't,
up to all
but
the
you
individual
can't
states.
do it by having we just wanna, we wanna limit the government as our overall thing, and then come out with a bunch of stuff that, it sounds good, like term limit sounds great, but what you do is you destroy the people who know how to run a legislature. You take them out.
You do away
Just
with
make
it.
it good at it.
Yes,
And the other thing about a term limit, when term
Well, see, these
limits, let me finish it, when you have a term limit, so often when it's your time is up, you will go the other way to the dark side and vote on things you wouldn't vote, because you know you don't have another election
Don't have to be elected again.
coming at you.
There's
And now they wanna do
Bad side of
part-time,
term.
which completely flattens the playing surface.
Those are what ifs. Those are what ifs.
They're in Levine's book.
Okay, well, obviously that you're
Liberty
a no.
Amendments. They're in,
Um,
you brought them up here.
How long
There-
would you wait to make sure everybody knows about the issue?
I don't think anybody in this room, everybody in this room knows about the issue. But, I would have taken this thing and studied it for an hour, and I would have got more out of it than what we went through tonight.
I think we need another month to study.
Well, basically,
Can
There's
I
a
ask
question.
you a question? What is the aim of all of this? Is this being carried on, are we talking grassroots? Are we taking a vote to do this on the state level to start?
we
Or
are
we're
looking,
taking on too much
Okay.
all at once?
do you want to make the motion? Shall I?
Bill's got something to say.
You got something to say, Bill?
I don't know most of what you said in my head, but everybody here that wants to think about our governor and the other peoples in Michigan. And they should look at when they had and changed the Constitution, Michigan's Constitution, and they really straightened out until Granholm. And that's true. It was, when Granholm got in there, she screwed everything up. But I think you ought to look at it more, at what happened before. Learn from what happened and what will go.
Okay, well, there's several things that we can do to further educate ourselves. I have that whole list of documentation that you guys can read through. There is a Convention of States, the simulation video that's 6.5 hours long. Basically, what my intention was here today was to get a consensus as to whether or not we can go after this as a group, whether or not I can say, well, the Alcona County Republicans supports this or not. We can do.
So are they doing this around the state at other Republican meetings?
I don't know is that they're doing it at other Republican meetings. I know there are.
Just say no. Let's take a vote.
I know we
We've got
have.
3 no's here.
I know we have.
I'm tired of it.
We're gonna play this one. This is what's going on in Michigan.
She's a great, she's doing but it's
Our Constitution has gone through a lot in the past 100 years. The individual rights of states and the individuals in states are being overwhelmed by a federal government that has overreached its authority.
Today, we are at an event in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, at the Soaring Eagle Casino. It's called Battle Cry Michigan. I'm here as a representative of Convention of States to help educate the people in attendance about Article 5 Convention. Where will we be in the next 10 years, the next 20 years? Who will be our leaders?
2017 is a year for Michigan to step up. People across the state are signing petitions to move forward, to restore our Constitution by calling a convention of states that will rein in the overuse of power, the overspending of our government, and the taking of our representatives and making them professional politicians instead of citizen legislators.
Our government was not going to limit their power. So I saw the Convention of States as a way to, for the people to take back the government.
Go to conventionofstates.com, study it, click on volunteer and see where you can fit in, where you can become a modern day.
So essentially, that's what's going on in Michigan. There are people just like that, holding conventions, holding meetings, doing this, and educating. It's already going on.
Can I say, you did a fantastic job.
Yes.
And that may be one of the things that has to happen, okay? To have or push something like this to get people, that's getting aware of. Okay, for everybody like myself and anybody that comes into any kind of a presentation like this. And I think it has a place and I think it's needed. And things like this has to happen to say, everybody says, holy cow, maybe I ought to start paying attention. Okay?
Well, that's, everything that we talked about tonight takes you back to one point. We need to educate people.
Yeah.
We need to build grassroots support. We need to find a mechanism to do that. Right now, talking about this Article 5, if the group decides to work down that line, all we're doing is basically taking an idea and educating people and try to make people aware. This hall could handle 100 people. We're lucky if we got 20 people that show up at a meeting. How do we get the word out? What kind of presentations do you want to see? What research do you want us to do to help educate the people in our community? But it's going to take getting people in the seats, get them here to talk about these things. Do I fully want to run out and put all the energy of this group into going after an Article 5 in Michigan We're one county. But what we can do is try and get a good agenda for our meetings, talk about meaningful subjects, not waste a lot of time, you know, in talking about 1,000 different issues. We got one basic issue, one basic mission as a group: educate people. Frank was talking about, you know, getting some of the youth, because they're not getting any kind of government education in schools anymore. It's not happening. Okay? How do we attack that particular issue? How do we get the kids that are coming up, and we need to focus on the kids. How do we get the kids coming up even aware of what the issues are? In a few years, they're going to be voting age. Are they going to be dumb as a box of rocks, voting for whatever somebody's going to give them? Or are they actually going to take personal responsibility for their own actions?
Larry, I want to speak to that.
Go ahead.
Before I came up here, I owned a business down in Troy. I had I had a hair salon and day spa, 35 hairdressers, all kids in their 20s. I think the oldest one was in her 30s. Obama sold the bill of goods so well. He was such a great salesman, because he went in there, he sent the other people in to tell them, you're going to get everything you want for free. You're not going to have to pay for college. Why should you have to pay for college? Why should you have to pay for health care? That's a baloney. That guy over there's got all the money. We're going to take that guy's money and we're going to pay for all the stuff and give you all that stuff, and you get a new pair of sneakers thrown in with you. And they believed it. I mean, I sat there in a business praying, screaming at these kids, no, there's no free lunch program. But we have raised a generations of kids because of a lack of education. They're going to believe whatever anybody's peddling. That's how Obama got in the first time, and that's how he got in the second time. Until you say, what do we need to do? We don't need to do this. I'll be honest with you, don't need to do this. We work with these kids every week. You got about a 2.5 second attention span that you're dealing with. You know, we try to limit it to, like, all right, we're having a half hour, you're going to hear our message for a half hour, then we're going to move on. You have to have those things. How cool would it be if you had a venue like this where you could teach a civics class? And it's going to take 20 minutes, a half hour of your time, and then you're going to we work with the schools to get them credit. Get them some kind of credit for that. They're trying to get through school any way they can. Try to change the way things we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting that things are going to be different. It's not going to be different.
Well, we've got as many of the older generation that don't have a clue on what's going on as the young kids.
By far, but you even have you have a missed generation. You have our kids that are clueless. Now they're teaching their kids, what are they going to learn?
Nothing. Well, that's the whole point of what can we do as a group to educate people. We need to, to work on the young ones, but we got many of our people that are our age that are just as clueless.
This is how our database is going to help. It's going to give us the names of everybody in our community that we can reach out to individually and say, look, we've got this going on. Come in, have coffee with us, and let's talk.
I got a bootleg copy of that, by the way.
Yeah.
Cool.
You know, we missed an opportunity. But Frank had an open house. There were a lot of young people. It's our job, and we should have talked about this before, to mix with the young people and to talk to them and ask them questions. I've always said that groups don't, like the Ascoti Yacht Club failed. Why? Because there were cliques. I became a member of the Ascoti Yacht Club. I knew a lot of the people When I walked in there, they said, "Hi, David, hi, Sonia, why don't you join us after dinner?" Why didn't you invite me to dinner for 2 years? When my membership came up for renewal, I didn't renew. Why should I? I'll go out with my wife someplace else. They didn't invite me into it. You know, whenever we have an opportunity to have young people around, such as we did the other day, we should have got a plan to try to talk to them.
There's other, that would not have been the perfect venue, but I hear what you're saying. There's other opportunities where we have these kids doing public service. Our focus is on Christ first. We teach them about Jesus Christ. From that point on, we take a value system, we say print off the Republican platform, print off the Democratic platform, put them together, and you tell me what's right and what's wrong.
But we
Pretty
need
easy.
great venues like that, where we sit down with the kids, and instead the kids sit
Absolutely.
together and they talk about their thumb machines and the game.
Oh, yeah.
And they wouldn't do that if I sat down next to one and started talking to them about things. I find that when kids talk to me, they find what I have to say quite interesting.
We need to
Dave?
put a cap on this.
Yeah.
We need to put a cap on this.
Right. Okay,
I would like to make a motion to either support the Article 5 Convention of States or to defer it for a month, giving you guys time to
Which
read through the
motion is
material.
it?
So, okay,
Defer.
I make a motion
Sound
to
like a
defer
double
for 1
motion.
month so we can mull this over.
Second
I
that.
second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
all right.
Anybody opposed?
I don't oppose the
Well-
mull over for a month, but I think we ought to call it no. Call the question no. Why do we need to
Well,
mull it over?
Because
You just got voted the other way.
Basically, yeah, 'cause basically, right now,
Well,
I
that's-
don't
that's
think
pretty,
they
yeah,
are,
they're not fully worked.
I don't think you guys are comfortable enough with it like I am, because I have had months to go over this and review it. I have gone through it and looked at all this stuff. And initially, when I looked at it, I was like, an Article 5 Convention of States, I'm not sure about that. But the more I read about it, the more I learned about it, I'm like, holy crap, this might very well be our next solution.
It's very appealing, but the issues, like I said, are we don't get to pick the delegates. And that is a real problem. Unless we can have
There are
influence over the
certain things,
legislature
see, there are
to
certain
get
things.
delegates, because there's no
As you-
limit, we got one
hey,
vote.
hey, hey, as
Okay,
you go
point-
through
wait a minute,
the
point of
material,
order.
as you
We
go
got-
through
You
the
got a motion
material.
on the board.
Do I?
There's a motion that was voted. Well, did you declare it, which way it is?
We are going to defer.
We'll
That
defer
was-
the
And we defer.
discussion,
So-
we'll put it on our agenda for next month, and
Read
we'll
it.
spend some more time.
And
I'm
then we'll vote on
hoping
it.
that everybody will read the material. In fact, you know what, Marilyn? Because I know you don't have internet. I will give you,
Okay, but we gotta move on.
We gotta move on.
yeah.
All right, I already talked about Trump mob that we did on